Today on Rescue USA, we'll witness some amazing flood rescues. Hurricanes and flash floods put entire communities in the path of disaster.
It was completely submerged. People that weren't able to get out really weren't even able to walk out. It came that fast.
But as the floodwaters rise, heroes rise up to save both lives and property.
Search and rescue! Do you need help?
I don't know what would have happened without them getting there, because the next people that came were the next day.
The victims and casualty numbers would have been a whole lot higher if not for the extraordinary courage and selflessness of these first responders.
Surrounded by rolling green hills covered in wild grasses, Manhattan, Kansas consistently ranks at the top of the list when it comes to best places to live in the United States. But over Labor Day weekend in 2018, heavy rain caused creeks and rivers to flood overnight, turning what was supposed to be a relaxing holiday weekend into a fight for their lives.
Labor Day in the United States is generally memorable for barbecues and even parades. But in 2018, the long holiday weekend in Manhattan, Kansas would soon be remembered for a much different reason. Well before dawn, meteorologists were tracking a line of storms moving into the area, causing rivers and streams to start rising at alarming rates.
I knew that there was a city to the west of us that was suffering some flooding, and I knew that that water was coming our way.
Over the next few hours, rain pummeled the low-lying neighborhoods, including Wildcat Creek, where the Garden Grove Senior Living Facility is situated. Tenant Gloria Richardson was told to evacuate her ground floor apartment as soon as possible.
So by the time I got out to the sidewalk, the water was coming up. The water came up just that fast. I was just panicking.
The creek had breached its banks, and Manhattan was about to suffer its third flash flood in the past 11 years.
It was completely submerged, the whole neighborhood. And so people that weren't able to get out really weren't even able to walk out. It came that fast.
I was really extremely shocked when I got to the building, and I couldn't even get down the street to my building. It was just cars were submerged, people were stuck.
Not being able to swim, my best bet for me was to go back in, go upstairs to my neighbor, Bonnie.
With city streets turned into gushing rivers, people were trapped. Firefighters had no choice but to take boats to rescue those caught in the deluge.
Thankfully, the quick actions of first responders allowed the community to stay safe.
But as the rain slowed down and the floodwaters began to recede, the extent of the damage became heartbreakingly clear, especially at the Garden Grove Senior Facility.
It was a mess. During the highest point in the water, there was water up, to the windows and submerging cars. Residents' items, things from the community room are just floating all around.
Because the floods came on so fast and so strong, people had very little time to save anything.
There is things in there that's gonna hurt me, like pictures of my daughter, because I had it in, like suitcases and stuff like that, and that water came in and got up in the suitcases.
But fortunately for those that were living at Garden Grove, another team of specialists was ready to deploy.
All we want is for the residents of Garden Grove is to get their lives back to normal as quickly as possible.
They were not only devastated by the loss of their home, but for their irreplaceable mementos, like Gloria Richardson's precious family photos.
Her car still had about 4 or 5 inches of water in the trunk. Then I could feel the picture frames as I was pulling them out of the car. I told her, I have your pictures. We're gonna save them.
In Gloria's case, these memories are important to her, especially since she has a daughter that has passed away.
After a comprehensive restoration process, Sheldon Yellen was able to make a special delivery to Gloria just a few weeks later.
I just want you to know that I heard of your spirit and the perseverance that you have to bounce back and to know that tomorrow's going to be better.
It's just been such a blessing, the way that I was treated through this.
The era rallied the troops to perform some heroic acts. I'd love to ask you to just take your time in opening this box.
To God be the glory. I thank you so much. And I was thinking about these pictures. I cannot thank you all enough for all the stuff that you've done.
This is what we do, preserving memories for special people like you.
I'll have to give you a hug.
Gloria.
To God be the glory. That's all I
God
can
bless
say. God bless you too.
Continue to inspire us all. We're so grateful that you've allowed us the honor of serving you.
Mexico Beach. It's a small town on the Gulf of Mexico, and it's known for its pristine beaches and old Florida charm. It's a popular vacation spot for many Americans, and obviously tropical weather, nothing new to the folks who live there. But in 2018, when Hurricane Michael slammed into the coast, its devastating storm surge, an instant wall of water, erased Mexico Beach. In the frightening hours after the storm hit, there was mostly eerie silence, until that silence was broken by two volunteer heroes rushing in to help.
The panhandle of northern Florida is well known for its beautiful shoreline, and Carolyn Metcalf has loved living in Mexico Beach for more than 3 decades.
A nice little American safe community. Nobody ever bothered anybody. It was a great place to be.
But that prime location right on the water also gives Mexico Beach a front row seat to some pretty intense weather. Consequently, longtime locals like Carolyn and her son, Scott Cothran, sometimes make the mistake of a lifetime, thinking that they can ignore a hurricane warning.
Mexico Beach police officer came by about 6 or 6:15 at night to let us know that they were evacuating, and it was a mandatory evacuation. But they weren't going to drag us out by handcuffs if we didn't leave.
Hurricane Michael became the first Category 5 storm to make landfall in the Florida Panhandle in recorded history, ultimately claiming 74 lives and causing $25 billion in damage. It was the worst wake-up call Scott and Carolyn could have imagined.
The hurricanes that we have stayed through, it was just wind and rain, and then it was gone. And I thought that this one was going to be that way too. I now know that was not a smart idea.
Nobody knew that that thing was going to grow into the monster that it did. So a lot of people that would have left but did not leave, when they woke up, it was too late for them to evacuate out.
As the epic hurricane decimated Mexico Beach, Carolyn's home of over 25 years was torn apart around mother and son.
We heard a crash, and I tried to open the door, and I could only open about this much. I watched the entire roof peel away from us. We ended up on our closet door, with walls falling down around us.
With winds lashing and water churning around them, Scott turned the closet door into a kind of life raft, wrapping himself around his mother to protect her from debris and the elements.
I had to stay on that because at least halfway through the riding of the debris, her arms had no strength left.
Miraculously, Carolyn and Scott were able to ride their makeshift life raft inland, but they were in shock, badly injured, and in desperate need of medical attention.
There was nobody here. No one was here. There were some people from up that way who were seeing if they could get out, who had stayed also, but those were the only people we saw for hours.
While thousands were still fleeing this lethal hurricane, Jason Maddie and Christian Oakes, part of a disaster task force, were actually driving into the eye wall of this storm, risking their lives to save others.
Disasters never clock out, and neither do first responders.
Rolling into Mexico Beach after dark, Jason and Christian were the only first responders in town. Their services were in desperate need, with Carolyn and Scott bleeding and in shock.
As Jason and I are heading to check on Scott and his mother, we are having to use flashlights because it's pitch black.
Hello? Is there anyone here? Do you need help? Are there any injuries?
So I didn't see the lights when he got there, but I heard the voices. And she was like, go see who that is.
We get in there, and Scott, he had a really bad gash on his finger. His mom had gotten a really bad gash on the right side of her head. We bandaged it up as best as we could. We cleaned it up to keep it from getting any infection.
I don't know what would have happened without them getting there, because the next people that came were the next day. I probably owe my life to both of them.
Carolyn and Scott have both been deeply affected by their life-threatening experience and are profoundly grateful for these volunteer first responders who left their own families at home and put their lives on the line for them.
Every time I come back, it's different. It's not worse, but, you know, in a way worse and in a way not worse. One of the miraculous things is that no more lives were lost. And a lot of that is due to people like Christian and Jason.
Christian and Jason, in my opinion, are true heroes because that's not their normal job. They're not firefighters. They're not police officers. They're not EMTs. A hero is not measured by what you do. It's measured by your heart. Are you putting others' needs ahead of your own?
We're, just two guys in this story, but there are thousands of others, civilians from all across the country that risk their lives. And all it takes is you just deciding, I'm not just gonna watch this on TV, I'm gonna go down there and help people because I can do that. I can give them a chance.
They say that lightning never strikes the same place twice. Well, that's not true. But what are the chances of a horrific flood hitting a town not once, but twice in 2 years? That's exactly what happened to one Baltimore, Maryland suburb. And even as the flooding wiped out businesses and buildings, neither storm could wipe out the spirit of the people that live there.
Ellicott City, Maryland is a quaint, historic town of just over 65,000 people. Nestled in a valley between two rivers, the Tiber and the Patapsco, it also houses the oldest surviving train station in the United States. But perhaps most importantly, Ellicott City is as close-knit a community as they come.
I've been in Ellicott City for 22 years in business. I love this town. This town is like my family away from my family.
We've had husbands and wives who've met here. Birthdays celebrated and graduations and engagements, and you just become a part of the community.
In July of 2016, another major life event hit this charming town, a devastating flood that wiped out many businesses right along Main Street.
Terrifying, terrible. We lost everything. I lost everything, and I don't know, it was just supposedly a 1,000-year flood.
But incredibly, the selfless spirit of teamwork helped the town and the Phoenix Emporium rise to glory again.
My employees were without jobs and should have been out looking for other employment. Instead, they came here and helped us get reopened.
Just like Mark, Joan Eve Shea Cohen rebuilt her business after the 2016 flood. But less than 2 years later, on Memorial Day weekend 2018, the unthinkable happened again.
Started to rain around 4 o'clock. We had customers in the store. We cut them little plastic bags and put them over them so they wouldn't get all soaked, hoping afterwards that they made it okay.
And then it just didn't stop, and it didn't let up at all. I've never seen it pour so hard. It was crazy. And it went from filling up the gutters to suddenly it was at the curb, and then it was over the sidewalk, and it was just 2016 all over again.
Here we go again, everybody.
It wasn't very long after that, the barrage of 911 calls requesting assistance came in.
Guys, we've got cars floating again.
First responders arrived on scene almost instantly, but because of the river of water coming down the street, they had almost no access to the Phoenix and other businesses. That's when everyday people had to step up and help each other the best they could.
All of a sudden, it wasn't just coming in like a little puddle into the front. It was coming in fast and furious.
I remember saying to Joan Eve, we have to get out of here. It is getting out of control, and we need to get to higher ground.
And at that point, we were kind of like, all right, we're not doing this. Get customers through the kitchen and upstairs.
Just minutes later, all up and down Main Street, first floor windows and doors were being blown out by the sheer force of the water.
I'm on the second floor. I have my phone out the window,
and it looks like it was like coming in waves up to 12 feet high. I was like, that's happening right now. We're doing this again, which was just like the worst deja vu ever.
While many people were safe, Joan-Eve and her friend Gary Weltner were dangerously trapped in that ferociously rising floodwater. Their only hope was to make it across a walking bridge to higher ground.
He just said, hold on as tight as you can. And I did. With one arm, I'm holding on to a railing across the Tiber River Bridge. So as he was bent over, actually trying to get forward, I looked like I was on his back. I probably was on his back, actually.
This brief glimpse of video taken by a neighbor captured Joan-Eve and Gary as they slogged through the treacherous current, and things were about to get worse.
I looked over my right shoulder at one point, and I saw that two of the railings that I had just held onto had broken away.
And I yelled, Gary, the railing's giving out. We're going to drown in the Tiber.
On Memorial Day weekend of 2018, Ellicott City, Maryland was hit by a flash flood that decimated the town. The nearby Tiber River rose an astonishing 4 feet in just 13 minutes. Hundreds of people were trapped on Main Street, forced to seek shelter on second and third floors. And although the speed of the water made rescues particularly precarious, first responders did what they always do. They dove in to help.
Joan-Eve Shea Cohen and Gary Weltner were virtually trapped on a bridge, pounded by torrential currents.
At one moment, I was completely paralyzed. I couldn't move, and I really thought that this could be the end. You know, but somehow, I guess it might be adrenaline to find the force and the energy to pull. And as we got around the corner of the pillar, the water was not as strong, so we managed to continue up the back alley to safety.
At last, the duo miraculously managed to stagger up the relative safety of the deck.
So we got up onto the deck, and the two of us, we hugged and we kissed, and Joan-Eve looked at me and she said, Gary, this must not be our time.
But I will tell you that had Gary not been there, I don't know what I would have done. I don't know. The best. The best. You give you a big medal that you should wear around your neck. I'm a hero.
In the months following its second massive flood in 2 years, the people of Ellicott City showed up strong and dug deep once again. Despite their broken hearts and damaged buildings, they rebuilt that beautiful town.
It's remarkable how fast Ellicott City is rebuilding. And I do admire the courage and the determination of the people of this town and the resilience to want to come back, even in an area where this may happen again.
The very act of rebuilding is an act of love. You're making a commitment to the place you were in, the place you made great memories. Sure, it's hard, and there is pain and loss that has happened, but the human spirit will prevail. And that's pretty amazing to see, especially in a beautiful town like Ellicott City.
That's why I really believe Ellicott City will remain. It will remain because there are strong people that want it to remain. And I'm certainly one of them. Even though I don't have a business here, I'll certainly support anything they want to do to keep it going.
Throughout these hurricanes and flash floods, each of these communities proved that no storm could ever dampen their spirit or exceptional heroism. And they're determined to come back, even better and stronger than before. I'm Ginger Z. We'll see you next time.